All right, welcome back to Canine Conversations. I'm your host, Robert Cabral. I hope you're enjoying the podcasts and you're subscribed, and that if you are not subscribed, that you do subscribe and download all the podcasts. Tons of great topics, and there's always more coming. There's always another topic that I haven't talked about yet. So today I want to talk about a topic that I've kind of touched on before, but I want to touch on it in a different realm. So recently, I had a guy who came out from another city on the East Coast to California to do the Bound Angels University training. Paid for it on his dime. Really hard worker, really good trainer. I really enjoyed watching him. I knew he had a lot of chops when I met him. When I watched him with the dogs, he left with even more chops. I mean, just really good technique, and has a really good energy. So he. And I'm going to say this too, that, people always say, there's certain techniques you use on shelter dogs, but you shouldn't use them on pets. But that's all crap, because the bottom line is a shelter dog was a pet before it got to the shelter, and all dogs are the same. This is something I've preached over and over and over. And it's every dog I've ever trained, whether it's a protection dog, an obedience dog, a pet dog, a shelter dog, an aggressive dog, whatever it is, competitive obedience, whatever. All these dogs are really similar. In fact, you can find great dogs in the shelter to do obedience with. A friend of Janet and mine took a dog from the shelter and did obedience with this dog and did great. I think she put a UDX on the dog. She's a good trainer. Dedicated a lot of time to it. The reason people get, a purebred dog from a breeder as opposed to a rescue dog is because they kind of want to hedge their bets. So they're going to say, like Goofy came from a breeder, and I knew I wanted to do protection with him and all this stuff, and I rescued 6, 7, 8 Malinois and placed them all, whether in rescue or to people. But I needed a dog that was going to get along with my Shar-Pei. I needed to know the genetics of the dog. I wanted the dog to have really good health, really good background. So I hedged my bets. I bought the dog. Big deal. People buy dogs all the time. The issue I have is people who put dogs into shelters. People who, whether they buy the dog, rescue the dog, steal the dog, whatever, and then put the dog into the shelter. That I have an issue with, because I have no tolerance for that. I don't know the reason why somebody would put a dog in a shelter. It's idiotic to me. But so anyway, let's get back to the story. So this guy came out from the East Coast, did this training, and then went back to his city on the East Coast and started applying it, started, using his skill, which, trust me, he didn't come here and become a dog trainer. He was a dog trainer before he got here, and then was an even better trainer, learned more about behaviors, about reading dogs, body language, behavior assessments, and all that stuff. And this guy has a full-time job and then does dog training on the side, which I think the guy could be a great dog trainer, but I think his job is, pays well and everything. He's got great benefits, which dog trainers don't really have. But he volunteers a lot of time to rescues, and he does things with kids. I mean, the guy's a really good guy. He's really doing a great thing. So he went to a shelter. I don't want to disclose too much because I don't want to slam the shelter. I don't want to get him in trouble or anything. But he went to a shelter on the East Coast, Northeast, to be a little more specific, and offered his services. Said that he would be happy to come and work with some of the rescue dogs, some of the behavioral issues, and he got a funny response back. So I'm going to read you his email first, and I'm going to kind of leave out some parts, and then I'm going to comment on it. So he says, "Hey, Robert, interesting story regarding a topic you speak about a lot. I contacted blank, a shelter in northeastern United States, in hopes of utilizing the training." I'm going to put my glasses on because it's going to be a lot easier, or else we're going to be here forever. "In hopes of utilizing the training tools I learned at the Bound Angels Shelter Dog Program, Bound Angels University. They are this community's main animal control area, and they're a kill shelter. I was informed that they have their own dog trainers on hand that work alongside of their shelter volunteers. After a few emails back and forth, they reviewed my credentials and agreed to partner with me and pass my info to future adopters for training services." In other words, I guess what he wanted to do was help train the dogs that get out of the shelter as a reference as a dog trainer, which this guy would be fantastic for. And a lot of dogs, when they get out of the shelter, do need follow-up training. So anyway, after discussing further details, the manager then stated that they use positive only methods. This is a shelter, by the way. This is a shelter that's killing dogs. They enforce this policy and stress it to all adopters. If I were to, and this is him talking now, as a trainer, if he were to use corrections, they would be completely against it, as it is aversive and scientifically proven not to work. I always love the scientifically proven not to work, because there's no scientific proof that correcting dogs doesn't work. In fact, if there is scientific proof of it, I would like to see it, because I have scientific proof, my proof of training that I've done, that it does work. But these are all these studies. These are all these university studies where 5 golden retrievers were, trained a certain way, and then all these crazy things. So anyway, it's a huge opportunity to boost my training, this guy's training, and gain a lot of clients here in his community. However, I declined the offer. And I love this. This is really huge for a dog trainer to say this. I won't sacrifice the integrity of balanced training, period. I've received incredible results using balanced training and using some of your methods. They've proven to be an invaluable tool. Immediately after I declined, I had 2 clients in this area that both stated they had 2 to 3 trainers before me, and the dog's behavioral issues didn't change or got worse. So there's a scientific study, right? Using only positive training, the dog got worse. And this is what you'll see all the time. Positive training is a fantastic training methodology. I use it. Positive only training is a diabolical nightmare for fixing issues that are based on drive or behavioral problems. Diabolical. It's horrible. Okay, they didn't like positive only methods. These clients that he got after turning down this gig, which would have been very lucrative for him, by the way. I know that. At first I was bummed, but after they told me how happy they were with the results, I knew I made the right decision. I wanted to thank you, he's thanking me, for always talking about this topic and staying true to your methods of training. I'm attaching the portion of the email so you can see how ridiculous their philosophies are at this shelter. Now, this shelter, I'm going to kind of paraphrase it so that it doesn't get washed away. And I did ask if I could use this. This shelter says to one of my students that they need to advise him that their shelter uses and approves only force-free, reward-based training methods. And they're very public with this message. They'll only do this. The science, the bullshit, calling this a science is insane to me. Now, I know I'm going to have to change my podcast to have explicit lyrics because I just said bullshit. But it's complete bullshit. Okay. The science behind dog training continues to find, it never found it in the first place, that punishing or correcting behaviors. Now, the fact that an educated person would put punishing and correcting in the same sentence is ludicrous, because punishing is punitive. Yeah, punishing. If you slap a dog around, if you kick a dog in the face, if you drag a dog and smack him and hit him with a bat or something, yeah, that's punitive. That's punishment. That's aversive. That's horrible. But I love the fact correcting behaviors is an ineffective method of teaching. I'm going to tell you something. When I went to school, if I made a mistake, do you know what the teacher did? They corrected my mistake. When I taught karate, if somebody didn't know how to block a punch, I corrected their mistake. But you know what happened when they didn't know how to block a punch? They got punched in the face. And then, okay, so I got to keep going. It's an ineffective method of teaching. In addition to often increasing fear and aggression, creating learned helplessness, and damaging the human-animal bond. I'm going to tell you something right now. I have trained countless dogs. I couldn't even count. Thousands of dogs. I've worked with thousands of dogs. I have never in thousands of dogs ever had a dog that, where's the word here? That damaged, where I damaged the human-animal bond because I corrected the dog. Never. It's never happened. Not, out of the 1,000, not even one, not even the flu. Oh, there was that one back in, in 97. No, it's never happened. No dog has ever gotten their human animal bond broken because they were corrected. In fact, I will tell you this much. In fact, dogs that are not corrected are the ones that damage their human-animal bond. And you know why? Because they're so damn confused, they don't know what to do. People are just standing there going, uh-oh, oh boy, oh, don't, because they can't say no. What kind of a ludicrous, idiotic, moronic, senseless society or are we fostering to try to train dogs to not do something and not correct it? How can you not correct a mistake? I don't know. I don't get it. Okay, anyway, so we're going to keep going here. So if we're going to go to, do this relationship, we need to insist that the dogs that are handled are only handled with R+ methods, which is reward plus based methods. And R+ R- P, RP, it's all designed to keep you guessing. They have made dog training so confusing through all this terminology that people go, wow, the people using these, in other words, I come in, I'm going to tell you, here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to build a relationship between you and your dog. I'm going to teach your dog boundaries. I'm going to teach your dog what they need to know. I'm going to teach you how to communicate with your dog. Let's get started. Let's train your dog. And people go, great, that sounds great. But when somebody comes in and starts saying, learned helplessness and R+ methodologies and learn, and escape avoidance and all these terminologies, which I know, but I don't use, you come across like you're a scientist. You've got to know what you're talking about. So you must be a genius. So you're instead of hiring a guy who really knows what he's doing, you're going to hire some savant, some person who is so brilliant. They use all this terminology, which is complete bullshit because nothing ever happens there. So the dog must only be handled by R+ methods. Only. This is something we emphasize to adopters and hope of educating them about training methods. By the way, there's no training method without a correction. Never. Whether it's Olympic coaching, whether it's math, whether it's dog training, whether it's learning archery, anything, shooting, gun shooting, anything. So there's something to emphasize to adopters in hopes of educating them about the training methods and alerting them. And this is where I get pissed off. Okay, this is what really pisses me off. Alerting them to the dangers of some of the aversive methods that have been popularized by television shows. That goes into the Cesar thing. I'm going to talk about that in a whole different podcast. I will do a podcast about how I feel about Cesar. Bottom line is, I don't have a problem with Cesar, right? I think Cesar, what I've always said, Cesar is too hard on soft dogs and too soft on hard dogs. As simple as that. And I'll go into that. I'll do that in another podcast. But, I'm going to tell you something. There's another bunch of bullshit training shows that are on television that are positive only, right? There's one that I'm not going to mention names because I mentioned Cesar and people give me a bunch of crap about it because I don't care about famous people. I don't want to be famous. I don't give a shit about being famous. I give a shit about helping dogs. This is my mission. My mission here, I've got enough money. I've got enough reputation where I could go train dogs and make a great living. But you know what? I choose to do this. I don't even really train that many dogs anymore except for on consults because I'm busy doing these podcasts, doing these videos to get the word out there that balanced training is the answer. You've got to focus on balanced training. You've got to focus on giving dogs corrections if you want to save them. So I'm going to take my glasses off. Everything's blurry when my glasses are off. But without that structure, without the no, without the yank on the leash, without the guidance to the dog to actually know what to do, you're misguiding the dog. I'll give you a great example. Janet is a fantastic trainer, really great. And, we've been training Dwayne lately to do hunt tests. And what happens here, our friend Jeremy had a really great statement I'm talking about in a video that I shot as well. And he talks about this concept that a retriever will naturally retrieve. It's naturally bred into the dog to run out, find what fell down, bird or whatever, or was thrown, and bring it back, not deliver it to hand. The delivering the object to hand is what takes the finesse. That's what we've got to really train the dog to do. And we can't do it with positive onlys, right? Janet did an amazing job. She did better on Dwayne than anybody would have done in getting all these behaviors, the perfect, really beautiful sits, perfect downs, heels. I mean, the dog heels like, I mean, you would be, well, I'll show you some videos. Janet's healing with this dog is poetry in motion. It's just beautiful. So Janet knows her limits, though. Janet knows, okay, what do I need to do to get past this? And there's some aversives. So if he takes the duck or the doken or the bumper or whatever it is and doesn't come back, he needs a strong no. He needs a pop on a long line and be told, no, you bring that right here. And he's going to get corrected for that. When he drops the object, he's going to get popped and corrected for dropping it because that's not acceptable. Right? There's no other way to do that. Now, here we're talking about training a dog to retrieve a bird dog. So that's not necessarily life or death, but if you bought a dog and you want to compete in this and this is what you want to do, then this is what you're going to have to train the dog to do. Simple as that. If you bought a shepherd and you want to do IPO and the dog or Mondi or whatever protection dog sport you want to do, and I'll do a podcast on protection dog sports too, then what you're going to do is if you're going to set the dog out, he's going to learn to bite. And if he doesn't out when you say out on the bite, he's going to receive a correction. And it's going to be in the line of a pop on the collar. And it's going to be aversive. Because if the dog bites, and let's take it for example, it's a police dog, and the dog bites somebody, and they clamp down, and the police come over, and the dog won't let go. What are you going to do? You're going to offer him a cookie? And a dog's not going to let go. So what these people, these dog scientists who are nuts, you know, and I'm not. Please don't start commenting that that I'm slamming all these people. Not all positive trainers are nuts. I'm a positive trainer. Janet's a positive trainer. I know lots of positive trainers who are amazing. The people who are nuts are those who think that you should never give a dog correction. I will clearly state this. A person who thinks a dog should never receive a correction and thereby still think that the dog is going to learn something and you're going to counter their drive, their predatory behavior is nuts. This has been all the positive trainers who wrote all these books have never been able to put a title on a dog. Well, maybe they put a little title on a dog, but they've never been able to take it to the ultimate levels. So in other words, to take a dog and put a challenge in front of them, a predatory challenge. In other words, put a dog on a down in the middle of a field and let a chicken walk by. And we've done this at the IPO club I was training at for years. We had this one evening where a rooster just flew into the training area, and it was the best thing because the rooster was super dog friendly. It probably belonged to somebody in the neighborhood, and the dogs were crazy. They saw him, they wanted to go after him, and we use this as the perfect training opportunity. Goofy could do it. All of our dogs could do it, except for one person who wasn't able to give their dog a correction. They went over and over and over and over, and all the dog wanted to do was kill the rooster. So without the aversive of a negative or a compulsion or a correction or whatever you want to call that, the dog's not going to learn it. She's just not going to learn it because their desire to chase that object, to kill that object, to play with that object, to whatever that is greater than their desire for the click, the cookie, the pet, the tug toy, or whatever it is. That's it. So when people say, well, there's this thing called the BAT, B-A-T. And what they would do is they'd say, well, if the dog has aggression, back the dog up for 100 feet or 200 feet, and then bring the dog 5 feet closer today, then 5 feet closer the next day, and 5 feet. You're looking at 20 days, by the way. And what happens a lot is when first of all, you're putting the other dog, the dummy dog, under immense pressure and torture to be barked at, lunged at, or whatever by this dog. And then you keep backing the dog back. So it's super unfair to the positive dog, which is one of the things I told Janet. Janet used to take Jimmy, who was a seeing eye dog convert, and she would take him to be the neutral dog in all these tests. And I said, stop it. He did it for a few years. He did great. But to constantly put a dog into that situation is cruelty. You can't do that. Get another dog. Have somebody else do it. But the idea that these dogs shouldn't get corrected, shouldn't receive any compulsion, any correction, is what's so ludicrous. I've had times with Goofy, my Shar-Pei, I would have my bird on the floor. I'd have kids over. I would have, you know, cats, or I mean, whatever it was, whatever, the chicken. There was a time where I was on the IPO field where we trained, and there was a little bunny rabbit that had started to be eaten by a coyote and had his back leg kind of ripped off. And I picked him up, and he was bleeding all over, and I had him in my left hand, and Goofy on a complete perfect focus heel on my left side, because he knew he had to do that, right? He knew there was a compulsion involved. He knew that if he didn't do it, he was going to get corrected. And Goofy had gotten corrections from, you know, early on, very, very fair corrections, very structured corrections. He never got yelled at. He never got abused. He never got beaten. He never got kicked or, you know, punched or any of these nutty things that people think balance training does. Right? The belief really is that if you are correcting a dog, you're abusing the dog. And by the way, nothing is further from the truth. Nothing is further from the truth, because positive training abuses dogs emotionally and mentally. The greatest abuse you can put on an animal is not being clear. Just like with a person. You ever have a fight with somebody, girlfriend, boyfriend, husband, wife, mother, father, brother, sister, anything, and you go, "What's wrong?" They go, "Nothing." No, seriously, tell me what's wrong. No, nothing. Everything's fine. That torture, that mental torture that you go through trying to figure out what is wrong or what's not wrong, if they're telling the truth or if they're lying, is emotionally the most abusive thing that I can possibly imagine. And that is exactly what positive-only trainers, I'm going to repeat it, positive-only trainers do. So for an animal control, you know, shelter, or, you know, whatever it is, you know, any rescue, humane society, SPCA, or anything, to go out and say we're not doing anything compulsive. It only must be positive training. There can't be any compulsion in the training, is insane. It will lead to the death of more and more dogs. Why am I so pissed off about this? Do I care? No, I don't care. I don't care if I ever train another dog. I'm not making my money off this stuff. I am putting it all out there. I'm putting my reputation, my name, and everything I believe in out there to tell you that positive-only training will lead to the death of countless more dogs, because we're not giving them structure and we're not giving them a clear communication. Remember something, dogs communicate primarily through body language and energy. Anybody will tell you that. Even, I mean, Cesar talked about that on TV, and he was damn right on it. So body language and energy is how dogs communicate. Now, people are going to withhold a treat. Well, you get a dog, and I've seen this too, by the way. I've seen dogs where people try to lure them with a treat, and then the dog is confused and just nails the person for the treat. The people are getting bitten up because they're trying to use treats. On a couple of different occasions, I can tell you about that. I can tell you that a fair correction has rarely led to a dog becoming, or a dog breaking down. It just doesn't happen. They're selling you a bill of goods. If you believe the positive-only training lie, then I urge you. In fact, I don't want to stand down on it and say, well, okay, if that's fine, believe what you want to believe. I urge you to investigate it further, because it's that important. It's critical. I'm putting it all on the line here to tell you that these I mean, I say snowflakes, I mean, these softies, or whatever you want to call them. First of all, I'm the biggest softie there is. I've cried over dogs that died. My friend's dog died last week or week before. I went to his house and helped him put the dog, you know, wrap him in a blanket and carry this dog, Guido, out to the car. And I cried my frickin' eyes out. It's a dog I trained since it was 8 weeks old. I mean, one of the best dogs, a really beautiful dog. And, you know, I have this side of me where I'm so compassionate. I feel so sorry. And I cry for these dogs because they're screwed, right? They're totally screwed because nobody is giving them the guidance. They're sitting in a damn shelter. They're sitting on a concrete floor behind an iron bar because people refuse to put a choke collar on the dog and give the dog the frickin' correction it needs to work. The dog will work. I guarantee you the dog will get it if you make it clear. if you're saying it's abusive to give the dog a yank on the collar, then I'm going to tell you it's abusive to sit and wait for a dog to figure out what he's doing wrong, because he doesn't know he's doing it wrong. If he thought it was wrong, he wouldn't be doing it. Dogs are not like humans. Dogs don't, in other words, dog doesn't say, oh, I'm not allowed to poop over here on the carpet. I'm going to go poop on the carpet to piss you off. No, they just don't know it's right to poop on the carpet. That's the BS. That's what people don't understand about canine behavior, because they're too busy studying it in a laboratory. These dog scientists that we're talking about are drawing these conclusions and have not trained dogs. They've not trained the difficult dogs that many of us have worked with. Many of us balance trainers have worked with. They've not been in the shelter as long as I've been in the shelter. They've not dealt with the human aggression, dog aggression, cat aggression, whatever, prey drive issues, protection dog issues, obedience issues, fearful issues, any of them. Any trainer in their right mind knows that if a dog has a fear-based aggression, it's a whole different animal to deal with than a dog who has dominance-based aggression, neither of which should be confused with a dog that lacks structure and doesn't know how to behave in certain environments. It doesn't know that it shouldn't do that. So you're training the dog, you work the bite, you work the bite for protection, and then you try to work the out. You reward him with another toy, you reward him with this or with that, and then the dog starts to get stronger and stronger and says, I'm not giving up the sleeve, I'm not outing on the leg or whatever. Now the dog's going to get a correction, because if it doesn't give the correction, the dog is useless. Right? That's it. You take a bomb explosive dog, and if he marks on the wrong place and somebody gets blown up on the place where he didn't mark, it's different, right? Now, there's different corrections for scent detection than for protection or obedience and stuff like that. I understand that. Please don't send me an email and tell me how to train scent detection dogs. What I'm saying essentially is that if a dog is obstinate and a dog challenges us, and that challenge can be in a confrontational way, or it can be in a disobedient way, that I'm going to go and lunge and bark at that dog, and I'm going to go try to attack that dog. And when a dog does that, the dog requires a firm correction. And these firm corrections, I said it before, I know this is where I always catch crap, is when, parents used to spank kids. Is child abuse acceptable? Of course not. It's horrible. It's terrible. Is a swat on the butt something really bad? I'm going to let you answer that yourself. I don't think it is. I taught karate to kids for countless years. I've never had to physically hit a child, obviously, ever. But the child knew through my presence, through my energy, that they would listen. That's what the dog needs to learn. But a dog is physical, right? A dog communicates through body language. It's not a verbal creature. I can tell a person, if you do this, you're going to get hit by a car. If you cross the street, you're going to get hit by a car. I can't tell a dog that. The dog will get hit by a car and will be killed if I don't correct him for running into the street. A dog will, not be able to play the game of obedience or protection or hunting or agility. I mean, agility is very low corrections, but anything if the dog learns negative behaviors. So for an animal shelter to take this position, and by the way, LA City has a position of no prong collars, no electric collars, and all this. I mean, I've never used one in any of my Bound Angels universities except in a demonstration on people and on my dogs, which is totally okay. But we have tons of people here in LA who are so averse to a dog getting a correction in the shelter that they would rather see the dog die, but they're not going to admit that, right? What they're going to tell you is, no, a positive trainer can train this dog and the dog will never receive a correction. But those positive trainers don't exist. They're completely, you know where they are? They're behind the keyboards typing stuff on YouTube and Facebook. They're not in the shelters. I'm in the shelters. Guys like this guy I'm talking about here back east, he's in the shelter. He's working these dogs. He's taking the challenging cases, the food aggressive cases, the human aggressive, the dog aggressive cases, and working them. I've got tons of dog training friends who take those cases, who work those dogs. They're not positive only, right? They're balanced. That means they give a reward or they give a correction. So the dog learns. There's a positive, there's a negative. There's no compulsion, there's no punishment. The dog is never punitively, physically harmed for doing something, even if he's doing something naughty. But the dog is corrected. The dog is corrected with either a correction on a leash or blocking the behavior or anything like that. So In closing, I want to be really clear here that dogs need corrections, dogs need structure, dogs need the guidance that humans can give them through a balanced training approach. If you work in a shelter and if you have any say in the shelter, SPCA, Humane Society, anything you work at, focus on balanced training. Positive only training will not solve your problems. I can promise you that. It's a lie. It's a terrible, terrible, terrible lie that's being sold to dog owners and animal lovers all over the world. Certain countries are banning crates, prong collars, electric collars, choke chains. I mean, they're going to ban everything. They're going to ban owning dogs. By the way, this is the path that they're going to. So you're going to end up with a little, a cockapoo or a shih tzu poo or whatever the heck those dogs are that have no personality. You won't be able to own a dog that has any personality, and that's the death of dog lovers. And please support balanced training. Find shelters and rescues that work with balanced trainers. Do your work, do your research, find these positive only trainers and see the difficult cases they've worked with. You won't find them. That doesn't exist. So anyway, that's my rant for the week. Hope you enjoyed the podcast. Please check out my website, robertcabral.com. Follow me on social media. Thank you for listening and thanks for making this all possible. Take care. This is Canine Conversations, over and out.